Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. We're letting the early birds into the room here just a moment early so we can get set up, and we'll get started in just a minute. Hopefully you are seeing six relatively handsome faces pinned to the first screen, present company excluded, and we'll have a bunch of other folks joining us up above. We are going to have a chance to interact later, so I'm looking forward to that. We're going to make use of the breakout feature here in Zoom. But while we're going, we would absolutely encourage you to make use of the chat feature. It should be open throughout so that we can interact even as we're going. Again, welcome. This is Being the Church in the post-COVID era. Excited to be a part of this team with a great group of leaders who we're going to hear from in just a moment as we introduce ourselves. But we're glad you're here. And apparently I'm the only one who can speak. Or
you are. Very well done, though. Thank you for that. So I want to ask, where all are we from? I see we got some of my friends, the Whiteheads here from Hawaii. They might be coming the farthest. Anybody coming farther in Hawaii today?
Yes. Good.
Keith, you must be in your new coffee shop. You're wearing your mask. I don't think you have to do it on. You don't have to do it for Zoom. I just wanted to let you know. So,
thank you. I probably will not talk too much since I'm here. Here, I'll show you.
There you go. Awesome to see, Keith. That's so cool.
Grand opening of a new coffee shop in North Seattle. Got to go.
Yes.
Coffee.
Yeah. What's the name of that coffee shop?
It's called Pilgrim.
Right by the Oak Tree Cinemas on like 100th and Aurora.
Yeah, 100th and Aurora, Pilgrim Coffee House. Yeah, it's our brand.
Woo!
It's growing. It's
Give it up
kind
for
of cool.
North Seattle,
right?
Yeah. Now you don't have to drive 3 miles to get a good cup of coffee.
It's literally that. Yes.
Coffee Mecca. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff.
What's the story behind the name Pilgrim?
Well, we've actually been working on it for about 8 years, and it really goes back to our Aurora Avenue, and our Calder Aurora Avenue, and being pilgrims in life. And it, of course, goes back to Paul Bunyan's writing as well as Christians. But then it connects with the neighborhood really well too, and just Highway 99 and what that used to be and still is in a lot of ways.
The Minnesotan in me loves the Paul Bunyan reference, but I think you're referring to it's
yeah.
John.
Sorry, John Bunyan. Yes.
A lot of people don't know it's the same guy. Seriously.
Yeah.
It gives a whole new meaning to Babe the Blue Ox.
But. Yeah, it's actually so part 2 of the series that Bunyan wrote. It's kind of the sequel. So lesser known, but still.
Yeah, lesser known. Yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, good.
Yeah. I thought he snuck that in. I thought that was getting by the goalie.
Nah. Hey, let's go ahead and get started. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. It's top of the hour. Gary, who are we and what are we doing here?
Yeah, so I'm going to jump in. My name is Gary Irby. I have the privilege of leading this wonderful crew, the Church Planting Coalition, Northwest Church Planting Coalition, as we call it. And I'm your introductory host for today before handing it over to Chivo. I'm going to share a few things with you real quickly as we get started. First of all, look up in that top corner there. You'll notice the recording button is on. So anything you say can and will be used against you with your church planting network. No, I'm just kidding. So, but know that we're recording today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the coalition. I'm going to make some introductions of people in the coalition and give you a very brief overview of what we're covering in our four webinars we're doing. So first of all, the Northwest Church Planting Coalition was started over a decade ago. When we first started it, we got together mostly to look at Seattle and to look at planting amongst ethnic groups, different languages. But when we got to the table, we realized that almost all of us had all church planting within our network. We're a bunch of network leaders. And in addition to that, we found out that most of us had multiple states that we're responsible for. So it morphed into the Northwest Church Planting Coalition. And as we sat down to really dream about what this could become, we built it around one question. The question is this: what can we do together that we can't do apart if we don't care who gets the credit except God? Go.
Amen.
And we started with that, and we had a 30-foot wide whiteboard, and we filled that thing, took pictures of it, filled it again. We just kept going with ways that we could help each other's networks. We all stay true to who we plant with, the tribe we're responsible for, but we share so many things. We share buildings and training and coaching and assessment and finances, equipment, consultations. We've done training for network leaders, children's leaders, worship leaders, technology, outreach, partnership development. It just goes on. And we've even trained some guys to be church planners. We've had stuff that's dealt with pipelines to develop new church planners, training planters that are on the ground, just ways that we can help. We've had different seminars that we've hosted with guys like Hugh Halter or Francis Chan came, and we were part of a conference with that. So just whatever we can do to help each other. It's a very broad group, but very true to the gospel. You know, Christ is first and foremost, and the Bible is our guide. But in this, we've had several Baptist groups, American Conservative, Southern. We've had Converge. We've had Presbyterians, Assemblies of God, Foursquare, Christian Evangelistic Association, Christian Reform, Acts 29, Christ the King, Thrive, Soma. It just goes on and on. So different guys kind of come in and out of the group from time to time. But a big part of this group is not just things we can do for planters, but how this group can help us get better as network leaders. I would tell you how many decades of experience we have as network leaders, but then you might start guessing our ages. So I'm just going to say there's a lot in the group, but we have new guys coming in. So it's pretty cool that we get to help the new guys figure some out. And we just, that's what we want to be, is a resource. So we want to help you. And we've done stuff helping guys in different networks. We've pointed planters to different networks. Somebody might come and go, boy, theologically, I don't really fit with you. Where can I go? And we send them to the next guy. A big part of what makes this work, I would say, is trust and the fact that we're friends. And so I have a couple of rules that I put. I don't know if any of the rest of them hold to them. I'm like, we don't want to steal each other's buildings, and we don't want to steal each other's church planners. We just want to see how we can bless each other and get this thing going. And so God has used this. As a matter of fact, I get asked, why do we see ministry happening the way it's happening in Seattle? And I think it's the heart of people like that are in this group is what's happening. We're not competing. We're working to see what God can do if we all work together. And so I often describe it as international missions without a passport. If we were all in the international mission field, we wouldn't be going, well, you're this group and I'm that group. It's like, you got food this week, we're coming to your house. So we realize as Christ following believers, we're in the minority. And so by God's grace, we work together. So who we are, first of all, I'm Gary Irby. Again, I lead church planting for Southern Baptists in the Northwest. For the Northwest Baptist Convention, I'm the church planting director, have a great team of catalysts that work with me in that. And then, of course, Natalie, who's on here. I don't know if you can see Natalie or not at the moment. I can't tell who you can see. I'm not paying that close attention. But Natalie is known as the lady who runs church planting. She's actually become a verb, an adjective. What I train network leaders in is find your own Natalie. That's the only thing they remember from a 3-day training. And so anyway,
true.
She's phenomenal, and she keeps our group together, keeps us running. Then we have others in the group. We got Dave DeVries here. Dave's got a couple of hats. For one, Dave is like the world-class coaching expert when it comes to church planting. He not only trains coaches, but he trains those who train coaches all over the world. But he's also taken on, because that wasn't enough, traveling the world. He's the executive director of Missionary Church in the Western region. He's got the West Coast, Colorado, and just a great part in helping this thing happen. We got George Johnson. George and I and Neil Tibbet, and some of us go back to the earlier version of this group that was like 20 years ago. And George is executive director of the Christian Evangelistic Association. And he's got Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Alaska, British Columbia, and just a phenomenal guy. He's done a lot of stuff, not only helping us think strategically, but has helped us in areas of looking at second staff. Sometimes it's how do you get the right team? So just been phenomenal there. We've got Micah Dodson. Micah, wave. Micah's there. Micah's had a couple of hats. Right now, he's the Thrive Church Planting Director for the West Coast. He is a church planner. He's a church planner in the city. He gets this stuff from the core. He's one of you guys, and just a great person to know and connect with. Let's see who else we got on here. We got others that are in the group, but I'm not sure that they're on with us today. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. Did I miss anybody other than obviously Chivo, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, because he gets our time today. So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead to Chivo and Jen. So Nathan Chivo Hawkins is with Stadia. And one of the things I love about Stadia is what we try to do as a coalition. That's what they do for church planning. They're like, hey, we're not just going to do our own. We're going to bless all these networks across the country. And so he's the regional director for the Western U.S. and one who's just helps us in a variety of ways, helping each of our planters and helping us with training and resourcing. And he's got his own Natalie now, and I don't think she takes offense of that. She's been identified. Jen Yost, who is now running as the administrative assistant for what Chivo's doing. She's also running our technology today. And what's really interesting is Nathan, or Chivo, and Jen have never met. They've only met online thanks to
True
COVID.
story.
So they're working together, but they've never met. So hopefully someday we can bring you guys together. So that's who we are. Let me just jump on real quick and tell you what we got coming. We're doing 90-minute webinars. We're doing 4 of them. They're all starting at 1 o'clock. Today is, can a biblical church be digital? Every generation has to deal with the thing, but we've never done it that way before. Well, guess what? They didn't have digital in the New Testament. Of course, it's not in the New Testament. But how do we deal with that? February 24th, the distributed church, organic, online, and on-site. And we're going to be hearing from Dave on that one. And just what are different variations of church looking like in the future? On March 10th, how coronavirus is helping churches change. How are these things going to be going into ministry beyond this time that we're in now? Not during COVID, but how, as we come out. And then on Thursday, session 4, remember the last one is Thursday, March 25th. All the others are Wednesdays. What, why, and how is a church phygital? And no, I didn't make that term up. That's what it is. Phygital, a primer on leveraging digital for physical church. That's what phygital means, digital and physical. So how do we do this? I want to leave you with this statement and then turn it over. There was an article, Chivo, you might have even shared this with us. And so if you're going to say it in your speech, I apologize. But what we're seeing, and this was shared by guys that are in the technology industry, is that COVID did not cause things to change, did not cause things to be different. What it did was, in a sense, accelerate or microwave what was already coming. Where things are going with the digital and physical church is where we would have gotten anyways, but COVID has forced our hand and caused it to move forward. And some of that's going to be great. Some of it's going to be a challenge, but all of it can be used for God's good. So we're going to get into that. Can a biblical church be digital? Let me pray for us and we'll go. God, we thank you so much for this time together. We thank you for each person that has invested their time to be here today. We thank you for the dialogue that's going to come out of what we hear from these presenters. We ask that you bless them all as they share. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Chivo, take it away.
Amen. Amen. Well, Gary, 2 things right off the bat. One, I want to clarify, both Natalie and Jen are far more than administrative assistants. They are executive administrators who get things done. And then the other person that you're seeing on our screen is my friend Wes Davis. And Wes is the lead and founding pastor of a 20-year-old church plant on the Kitsap Peninsula called newlife.tv. And I've asked Wes to join us today as sort of a co-presenter with me. He's going to provide some color commentary and some actual stories and insights and wisdoms. And I'm going to try to present some data and make an argument and share some things. So Wes, first of all, thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of this. We know that New Life is a multiplying church. You have a kingdom vision. We're really glad you're here.
Thank you. One of my dreams is coming true right now. I'm being introduced as Chivo's friend. That's pretty awesome, huh?
Oh, you are kind. You are kind. So yeah, as Gary said, this is the first in a 4-part series. And today, Wes and I are going to unpack and really try to address that first question. Can a biblical church be digital? And I want to argue that the answer to that question is not only an emphatic yes, but moreover, that is true to our Christology, our doctrine, the incarnation, the fact that Jesus came to be with us. And if you think of the internet as a location, just like we would think of another country or another community, we need to send missionaries there. We need to be there. We need to be present. So that's where I just want to start. So allow me to share some ideas with you. And Wes, you know how we're going to do this. We're just going to jump back and forth, banter. And then also, we have encouraged you to make use of the chat, but we're also going to make use of the breakout rooms. So we're going to pause a few minutes into this, and we're going to break you up into groups, and we're going to have a chance for all of you who are listening and watching to take yourselves off mute and to ask questions and to push back and to agree or disagree in a Christ-like manner. And so save those questions, put them in the chat, but also know that we're going to have that opportunity. I'm looking forward to that, Wes. What do you think?
Well, Chivo, one of the ways to maybe even think about the question differently is if we're contextualizing the gospel, one of the questions might be, can a biblical church today not be digital?
Oh, yes. I really like that.
I'm just trying to give you softballs. I'm trying to,
serve them up, boss. I need it. That's going to be great. Okay. So we're reframing it. Can you not be digital? All right. So hopefully everybody's seen a slide deck. There's a handsome gentleman right here. The very first step in this is to acknowledge what we really believe, and that everything is informed by not just our theology, but our Christology. And so we know that we serve a Savior who came to us. And so our Christology should therefore inform our missiology, the fact that we are all being sent. And that is what informs our ecclesiology. So if we get these things out of order, which I think the church has perhaps done on occasion, we are going to trip ourselves up. So if you disagree with that, that'll be something for us to press into as we go a little bit further. So from there, we need to start unpacking what it is that we're talking about when we say the church. If a church can or can't be digital, what do we mean? Well, this biblical term, ecclesia, we translate or render into English as a called out people. And I really like the notion of being called out because it already implies there's motion, it's dynamic. Community means this is not something that we do alone. And most importantly, we really believe that form is secondary. It follows function. And in fact, we are much more interested in the mission than the model. I think it's Andy Stanley who says, we're married to the mission, not the model. And Wes, that would be true of New Life, right? I mean, that's kind of how you guys have gone through your ministry over these last few years.
Yeah, well, Chivo, when we're looking to start the church, first of all, we were asked to start the church. Like I didn't have this dream or vision or this, literally just our senior pastor said, hey, would you pray about starting a new church to reach new people? Which is really kind of fascinating to think of an existing church that's thriving in a community going, hey, there's still people not being reached with the gospel. And so when you don't have a building, it's really easy to think, you know what, maybe the church is more than just a building.
Oh.
And so when you look at like how church is used, not just in the gospel, but how is it used in Roman culture? And so if you think of it as citizens being called out from their homes to talk about in an assembly the good of the city, or an elite military force being sent out on mission, I think it informs us on what it is for us to be sent people together. And when I think about Christology and I think about, you said missiology, ecclesiology, when I think of all that, literally it's just the love of God.
Amen. Amen.
God's
all
love
right, so
for people is so big, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this is a question that we at Stadia have been wrestling with for some time. And we got into this digital space providentially before COVID. And even at that point, we were wrestling because we're working in all these different contexts and spaces. How would we define for our purposes what a church is? And so this is the definition that we've come up with at this point. It's a working definition. It's not set in stone. You can argue with our theology, but I'll unpack it here in just a moment. So hopefully you can see this now. We believe that the church is a tangible expression of God's love lived out through a gathering of followers of Jesus who are committed to one another and to the world as characterized in the New Testament. So what exactly is that? What do we see of the church in the New Testament? Well, this is what we look to specifically in the book of Acts. Now, we would argue that none of these things are bound to a particular context, location, or more importantly, even medium. Do you agree with that, Wes? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think when Paul was in prison, he probably wasn't wondering the question of, am I still part of the church? And so there's obviously there's something inside of the believer that says, hey, I want to be together physically with other believers. But when you can't, or when there's other ways to do that, I think you go, let's lean into those things. And so I think Paul had an opportunity in his day to contextualize, hey, we can connect through these missionary journeys, through these epistles, there's just so many different ways that we can connect.
Yeah. All right. You're teasing us up here because we're gonna come back to how Paul sort of served the church really when he was in prison and even when he was in the island of Patmos. So, but let's just look. There's obviously lots of different definitions of what a church is. Here's another one that I found to be really helpful. This is from our friends Todd Wilson of Exponential and Dr. Larry Walkenmeyer in their book, Mobilization Flywheel, which, by the way, you can download for free, no strings attached, from our friends at Exponential. The link to that is at the bottom. They will email you every day, all day, 3 times a day. I shouldn't have said that. This is being recorded. I love Exponential. But this is how they define a church. Again, none of this is location or context specific. And again, we don't think it's medium specific. We think you can do these things and see these things realized in all sorts of different contexts, including online. So let's say a few things about online, because we're answering the question, yes. We believe, here's a part of the why, okay? So if we have this many people in the US who are already engaged, they're already using social media. 3 in 10 US adults have used an online dating app. Oh my gosh, Wes, aren't you glad that you and I are married to our wives and we don't have to use dating apps? I can't imagine.
I struggle with I struggle on Facebook right now. That would I don't even have that game, you know?
Seriously, yeah, I don't have that game either. But yet 164 million people are playing online games. That is crazy. And the largest group, 35 to 44-year-olds. Okay, people, we need to get to work if that's how we're spending our time. Prior to COVID, the estimate that 70% of all people who visited your church did so first digitally. So this is already happening. Gary alluded to this, all right? So these are numbers that demonstrate church engagement or involvement before coronavirus, so BCV. And the source is linked there, but you can see approximately.
I heard that before, BCV. That's a thing, huh?
That's a thing. It's totally a thing. I'm making it a thing. Will you join me, Wes? Let's make it a thing. It's a thing. All right. But yeah, so I mean, what percentage of the United States population was involved in the church before the pandemic? This speaks to that at a core issue. And Gary alluded to this as well. We really believe that COVID isn't the crisis. It's just accelerated and perhaps exposed the crisis. So Wes, you probably saw some of this. I mean, you're a phenomenal communicator. People show up to hear you speak. And yet there were people who were not maybe living as a fully formed disciple who were a part of your church. Well, maybe not your church, but those people existed in my church. Does that even make sense or resonate?
Yeah. Well, yeah. When you start talking about people during COVID being exposed, I'd say like, how about me?
Ooh.
I mean, I literally, chivo, I wrote down for 2020, because doesn't it sound like a great year to cast vision and be like, visionary? And
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I really wrote down for 2020, my word of the year, which is, I don't even know if you're supposed to do that. Maybe that's like a Christian fortune cookie, but I wrote down connection. Like that's, and even John 15, 5, just that whole vine branches, the life of Christ. We get halfway through the year and I realized like, I feel terrible. Like I'm used to people showing up and hearing me preach, and there's not a lot of I found myself just on Sundays, like I'm like, instead of celebrating, this is a great day. This is a day we celebrate the risen Christ. I was like, I'm not happy.
Yeah.
And it was just a moment for me, to go back to John 15. And what I noticed was, before John 15:5, there's the whole part on the Father where he starts to like prune and cut away. There's no part of my growth plan that involves pruning and cutting away.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
I think it's cutting away back to kind of the heart of God for people, and his desire to make disciples who make disciples who live in his way. So like that, I mean, that was pretty powerful for me personally, is to start to feel God's presence personally in just like in a way that I hadn't felt in a while.
yeah. So we recognize in that graphic that we saw, okay, we're in this crisis, whether you would locate it because of COVID or COVID has just exposed it, one way or the other, we want to move ourselves beyond it. And you alluded to this earlier. I want to share this image and invite people to just reflect on it for a moment. And then Wes, you can actually tell us what it is that we're seeing here, because this speaks to what you mentioned as it relates to, okay, Paul didn't stop being a part of the church when he was imprisoned or when he was exiled. So what do you think this image reflects?
Well, I mean, yeah, you see it with Paul. You see it also with John, in the churches that he had oversight over. Is like that picture to me just looks like, okay, all of the vine, the vine and branches. Kind of picture Jesus is kind of somehow in a kingdom way, in a realm that we may not physically see, that he's the vine and all of these are just branches.
That's really good. Okay, so I didn't throw you a softball here. I don't know if I'd showed you this in advance, Wes, but I like that because
you didn't
actually
at all.
teed up. Okay, so that's my fault.
That was neither. You didn't even say anything about the dating app either. So both of them are new.
Well, we got to keep you on your toes, right? So this is actually a representation of the Roman road, depicted as a subway system. So we really believe that the Roman road is it's our generation, or rather the internet is our generation's Roman road. It was something that was built by the empire that the kingdom can now exploit and leverage for the gospel. But I love that you went to that sort of vine and branches and nodes and such, because that's teeing up what Dr. Dave DeVries is going to talk about in our next webinar, where he talks about the distributed church. But yeah, it's just a fun image to consider. Okay, what does it mean to be the church in this context? And that was really one of the reasons I wanted you to be here, Wes, because you're a futurist, you're a forward-thinking leader. New Life was already doing creative and innovative things long before this. You're going to be doing creative and innovative things after this. And when you and I talked about this in anticipation of our time, I said, well, what are you doing? You said, we're just getting back to the heart of what it means to be a disciple and what it means to experience Jesus. What does that look like? What does that mean?
Well, so when we launched, before I can go all the way back to this, like 7 couples in my house, like that's 20 years ago. And it's funny is back then, all we were thinking about is, okay, let's read the book of Acts together. That's what we said. Let's read it. We didn't know if we should do it. It just seemed like I read somewhere that a church planting group did it. We should do it. So let's read Acts together. And let's just ask, like, God, what do you want us to do? And it's just kind of interesting is I found that a lot of my friends during the COVID, during the pandemic, they felt disconnected, and they would say from the church, but when we drilled down, it was actually from Jesus.
Oh,
and getting back to that sense of connecting and walking with Christ during your day, like in real life with real people, apprenticing to Christ, for me, I found myself, I was sitting downstairs, I had my Bible open, and I'm just in a bad mood. And this was the turning point. And I'm sitting there and I start to move into, like, I've prayed and I just move into, like, I'm just praying, I'm just saying stuff. And I felt like God said to me that, you know how you kind of start to hear a voice that you're like, it's not yours. And that voice of the Spirit to me just said, stop. And then just like what I heard next was, just talk to me. And so I just got honest, and I I just finally just said to God, okay, I just said, okay, I'm here. And when I said the word here, I felt God's presence again in a powerful way. And I felt like he said, I've been here the whole time. And I love when you see people have encounters with God in the Bible, they will say that, like, here I am, or I am here, here am I. I mean, they just, I'm here. And that's where I think that God's voice and his spirit leads to the creativity that we need. And so starting with the creative thought, we start with this is be connected to the vine and allow the life of Christ. Because here's the thing is every community is different. Every, even on this call, how we contextualize to our areas and the needs is going to be specific and different. But that voice is that voice, that moment, and it is something that all of us need. And that vine, it's the same vine. It's not like we're all connected to the same church.
Yes. Okay, so you teed this up really well because that's where we're going. We got a bunch of different people here. We're actually going to jump into some breakout rooms and we're going to take advantage of this opportunity to press into this. You talked about how we're distributed, we're connected, we're a part of the same church. So we're going to throw you all into some breakout rooms with some of the leaders that you've seen thus far. And one other leader who I don't think we got to introduce at the top of the hour, my friend and colleague, who's also Wes's friend and colleague, and he was first, and his name is Dan. So if you luck out and get to be in a breakout with Dan Serdal, he's going to have all the answers. All right. But these are the questions that we want you to break into. So it's 1:30 now. We're going to take about 12 minutes. We're going to go into breakout rooms and we're going to ask what's right, wrong, missing, and confusing as we seek to answer this question. Can a biblical church be digital? Or I like the way you put it, Wes, can a biblical church not be digital? So I'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Let's have some fun and be brave, friends. Take yourselves off mute and push back. This can be a lot of fun.
I was making an excellent point. I'm really, really bummed.
Hey, we had some good stuff going on. We were ready to. I thought we were going to do a baptism right there.
There's never a good time to end a breakout room. There's just not.
There's not. Oh, we're leading someone to the Lord here today.
George was ready to do an offering there. So,
can I say one of the things that got said in our breakout that I thought was really good was somebody said we need to stay in the I don't know mode a little longer. And that will help us to experiment. And then they were about to ask the question of how do we use the number 1 and number 2 search engines, which I'm guessing are Google and YouTube. At least they're 1 and 2 from my household.
Yes.
Actually, number 2 and 7 are YouTube and Reddit.
And Reddit. Okay. Well, I was only using Reddit for GameStop. So.
Yeah.
I recognize that voice. So Wes, you better attribute those insights to our friend here.
Well, those insights I believe were from Nancy Ortberg, and
And actually,
we don't even know she's driving. Yeah. We couldn't even see her face.
Well, and those insights came from a pastor of innovation in the Bay Area named Darren Alarde, who our team has spent time with as he's been working on this kind of on the front end.
I don't know. I'm not totally buying this as Nancy Ortberg. I mean,
I recognize that voice. She's a friend.
You do.
I need proof before I'm going to buy into that.
And I'm going to mute. I'm muting.
All right. Well, hey, this is fun. And we are going to go back into those breakout rooms. So now everybody's hoping, I want to be in the breakout with Nancy or with Wes or with Dave or Dan. Oh gosh, I hope I don't get Chivo again. All right. So that first session or section rather, we tried to just answer the question emphatically, yes. So in this next section, I want to start to press into the why, and we'll tease out a little bit of the what. Somebody in my breakout said, what exactly is a digital church? You haven't answered that question. You are right, bud. We are going to go there right now. And then I'll tease up a little bit of the how, which is coming. That's the next 3 sessions. So that's why you want to come back in 2 weeks and in 4 weeks and in 6 weeks, I think is the math. So for the why, I'm actually going to lean on some insights and some data. Anybody like data on this call? So Stadia partnered with our friends at the Barna Group. You've heard of them. They are the experts when it comes to data and analytics and doing surveys within the church. And we did a study with them on the state of the digital church. Now, I want to warn you, this was first presented or produced in October of 2020. So it's a little bit dated already, because we know that 4 months in COVID time is like, what is that, Wes? Is that like 4 years?
Dog years.
It's dog years.
Yeah.
But there are some insights and takeaways from this data that I think we can extrapolate from even further, particularly if we tease it out, another few months. So here's some of the information and insights that we gleaned from them. All of this, by the way, is available directly from Barna if you go to their website. But look at some of these indicators of people who have already engaged. Again, this was as of October of last year, in an online church service at some point during COVID. No surprise who's trending upward, who's trending downward. No comment there, Wes. I don't know. But I think it's also interesting to see the difference between different groups, both ethnicities, backgrounds, different types of households, different expressions of the church. A lot of data that would indicate people are already doing this. So let's lean into that. Moreover, if we look at who's watching church online during COVID, it's not just us Jesus people. And we know that a lot of folks from other traditions, other faiths are actually checking out what we're doing in a way that is a little less threatening, because they don't have to show up. And you can do that in the privacy of your own home. And that's kind of exciting just from a missionary standpoint. And then look at the way people respond to this question. When I attend church digitally, I am able to participate in all the traditions that are important for my faith experience. 76% of the respondents agreed with that. 77% believe that they're actually making a meaningful contribution to their church community. Now, I would argue showing up is one thing. And all of us who know there are people that show up in our physical space, and there may be, well, their contribution might be debatable, but 77% feel cared for by their pastors. So pastors, be encouraged. Your people are feeling your care. And 80% say that they feel connected to their community. Moreover, people are open to the idea of the digital church in the future. Again, no surprise, there's a difference based on demographics, different segments of the population, but by and large, overwhelmingly, 52% is not overwhelming, but a significant percent are definitely open to this. And I suspect that number continues to increase as we go on into the pandemic.
Would you say, Chivo, that this isn't like a binary either or? This is like, as people, because at some point people are going to be gravitating towards more in person as the pandemic at some point thaws out from the ice age. But online's not going to go away. So this is probably something that's going to be, it's going to be true in two directions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, that's exactly what this slide speaks to, is the fact that after the pandemic, people still think we should leverage these tools for connecting, for facilitating those types of gatherings, all sorts of things where we see the value of leveraging these resources. This just speaks to people that have been engaged and their preferences coming out of COVID. What are people looking for? Very few are saying only physical. In fact, most people are saying either both, and there's a growing contingency of people who are saying, yeah, I like this digital thing and I want to continue to lean into this. So let's begin now to unpack, what do we mean by a digital church? And so to do that, I want to differentiate between what a lot of us are doing or have been doing, which is presenting some level of online experience. So that means we're broadcasting, we're sharing something, but we would all agree, just like in the physical church, services are a part of, but not the whole. They're not the sum of the church. So there are a lot of people who are broadcasting, but very few who are actually discipling. Do you agree with that, Wes? Would you say that's true in your experience?
Well, it's probably true when it was just in person.
That's the point. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's absolutely right. When we're just doing services, whether they're online or in person, that it's insufficient. And so that's why when we press into, okay, what exactly is a digital church? That's where we would say, that's where you add this element of true discipleship. There needs to be an engagement pathway. The question is, okay, someone stumbles across your stream from another part of your community. Can they access and become a part of your church in a digital fashion? Can they commit to your church? Can they be engaged in your church? Can they serve in your church? Can they give to your church? Can they feel connected to your church without being at the church? That's what differentiates an online experience from true church online. Now, there are some examples of these, and this is what I want to point people to. A digital church can exist in the physical space and have a digital ministry, but at the end of the day, they're utilizing digital mediums for disciple-making processes. So they're creating communities, and communities already exist in the online environment. You think about different people who are engaged around shared interests or different channels, whether it be a particular social media channel or people who are engaging in Second Life, virtual reality, YouTubers. All of these people are forming and creating real community online. So the question is, how do we connect with these people, and how do we launch not just digital, but micro church expressions? And really, how can our church be multimodal? How can we have an expression in all of these different contexts? So here's just a couple of examples. Many of you have asked, we'll be happy to make the slide deck available. If you follow up with us, you can email me directly. I'll share my email in a moment, or perhaps Jen will put it in the chat. Be happy to share these resources for you to press into. At the end of the day, what we argue is that churches should be phygital. And that's the term that Gary introduced us to at the top of the hour. Stadia didn't invent it either. Like many things, it was coined in the marketplace and the church has embraced it. But it's this notion of the both and, combining both the physical and the digital. It's utilizing them in a complementary fashion. Ideally, we want it to be symbiotic, the relationship, so that we wouldn't get frustrated when somebody pulls out their phone while we're preaching. But in fact, we would encourage that. And we would say, look, let's leverage that technology that you have in your pocket. And then in the same way, conversely, how do we engage the five senses in a disembodied state? What are ways that we can actually make this tangible? I want to touch something. I want to feel something. I want to smell something. I want to taste something. We're good at that in the church. How can we translate that digitally? Wes, are you tracking? Are there ways that you've thought about this as it relates to New Life?
Well, I heard of a story. There's somebody that had been watching online, and then from that actually joined a kind of a disciple making group. And so these are people that never saw each other, kind of probably a little bit like you and Jen. And they'd never seen each other, but they had developed this relationship, friendship, and mutual support. And then what was fun is, so they live in different countries. So wow. The person went and visited them. And so they had this kind of like 1 week experience together. And I even wonder in the future, just wondering if maybe I hear people come less in person, or will people, I don't know, but we probably will stay longer. And so there's that whole sense of like when we are together, there's as opposed to in the past, I always felt like I was trying to cut every time you're with somebody 15 minutes shorter.
Yes. Well, and that just speaks to the fact that in both contexts, whether it's online or in person, at the end of the day, ministry is about relationships, not technology. And when you talk about engagement, a stat I just read that just totally blew my mind. So this new social media platform that people are all abuzz about, myself included, Clubhouse, the average engagement, the average length of time that a person spends on that platform is 90 minutes. Now, I check Facebook for 90 seconds. Can you imagine a platform where I'm leaning in and engaging 90 minutes at a time. Think about the implications of that for ministry, for the church, for what we can do in that online space. Kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm glad I don't know about it yet.
You're like, what? I don't even know. Okay, and I'm a newbie. I'm
already having a hard time explaining to my wife.
Well, I got on that bandwagon, but I never got on the TikTok or some of the other ones. So like I'm not really there, but okay. So we got just a few minutes before we're going to go into another breakout, but this is where I want to really make a plug for, what am I sharing? I don't know what I'm sharing there. I want to share just a couple more slides and hopefully you'll see them here. Okay, hopefully we're all seeing ministry, it's relationships, not technology, right? Thank you, Dan. So this is where I want to talk and tease up a little bit more of what's to come, what you can expect in the next 3 sessions, as well as an opportunity to press into this a little bit further with Stadia, which is what we're calling our phygital learning community. So it's an online, interactive, virtual learning community where we get churches together from all across the United States. We've even got our first international participant this year, where they're pressing into this. So if you're interested in what we're hearing today, or you want to know more, you want to learn from people who are perhaps a step or two ahead of you, encourage you to check us out and consider that. Now, the first bullet point here is there is no silver bullet. So recognize that we don't have all the answers. We're creating an opportunity where people can come together and ask the right questions. And I think that's what you or maybe Nancy alluded to, is we need to stay in that I don't know phase. So we're doing that, but we're doing it together. So when I have a glimpse of something, I can share it with you. When you have a glimpse of something, you can share it with me. So based on that, let's go back into our breakout rooms. We'll spend another 10 minutes together there, and then we'll come back. We'll land the plane. We'll have a few minutes for Q&A. We said 90 minutes, 75 minutes. Some of you are saying, I got 60. I'm going to bail during the breakout. Let's see what happens. I encourage you to come back because we're going to give you some more examples and share a really inspiring story. Wes might even tell a joke. So stay tuned. We'll see you after the breakout. Right, Wes? You got a good one. I know it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's see where we end up. I'm excited for our breakouts. All right. Thanks, Jen. So Rolando, tell me again, what are you in BC, did you say?
Yes, we are in the city of Surrey, British Columbia, Canada. Yeah,
excellent.
Our ministry is focused on Filipino community, but not exclusively.
Awesome. Well, thank you and George for making this a truly international event. I'm delighted that we have at least one participant from outside the U.S.
It's a blessing for me. Thank you for inviting me.
Indeed, indeed.
And great hat too.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not promoting anything.
Oh,
is that a marijuana leaf on that hat?
No. That's Washington.
It's the Adidas. Okay. It's the Adidas.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, good. Well, are we all back here, Jen? Is everybody here?
Yeah, everybody. Force back. We're here.
Oh, thanks, Gary. All right.
Well, hey, let's again.
let's try to land this plane. I'd love to share something. One last thing with you. I don't know, Wes, anything just genius that came out of your breakout that we want to share?
Well,
insights, closing thoughts.
Several genius things came out for sure because of the group we were with, but one specific was one of the guys on there, their churches kind of spent the year before the pandemic trying to get people to lower their screen times to interact with the people in real life. Now it feels like we're telling them, actually, just kidding, be on the screen a lot. So how would you respond to that, Chivo?
Context. Context is everything. It's obviously, what are you doing with that screen time? How are you making use of that? I mean, all of our time is a resource that we steward. It's of the Lord's. And so, am I investing it in the church or I'm investing it in Netflix? I would argue there's a difference between being online to connect with the body and being online to disconnect with the body. And I think you could do either. And, which is it? As Christians, I think we're called to that connection. So sounds like you had some smart people in your room. I had a great room.
You were too smart for me, but not too smart for you. So that was good.
Hey, if I can jump in, yeah, we had smart ones too. I just want to point out. I mean, they were talking about, they were actually getting ahead of us in our group. They were talking about, hey, we're having people coming from these other parts of the world to our church, and we can see churches that are going to start there. And we want to know how to connect with leaders that are already there, pastors that are, and connect these people to local bodies if that's appropriate. And we even got into some of the discussion about what's happening. Like we're working some with our International Mission Board and those of us in North America to communicate about diaspora as people come here from other countries that are believers. And as they go from here back to their home country, how do we communicate so they don't get lost? And the digital church aids that. It allows us to learn about these people and help connect some that otherwise might not know about a church literally next door to them. And so ways that can expand the kingdom.
Oh, well, I can't wait for our next session, Gary, when we get to hear from Dave talking about the distributed church, because I know he's going to answer all our questions. All I did was ask a bunch, but Dave will answer them. And maybe we'll even get Wes to come back. I hope all of you who are here will come back and tell your friends. We do hope that this is a resource. We hope that it's an encouragement, a blessing, an inspiration. Yeah, I plug Stadia because it's a resource. And if it serves you, check us out. And if not, know that we're for you. And everybody you saw at the top of this call is for you. Gary, if you think it's okay, I'd love to kind of share an encouraging story as an inspiring note. And then we'll come back here. It's a 3-minute video and we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. If you thought it was 75, you can bail. But if you got a few more minutes, we'll come back into the large room and we'll stay together and we'll take just a couple more minutes. But I want to share one last thing. I pray that this is an encouragement and an inspiration. It's the story of a church planter who's planting a church and he's doing it digital first. And he is a guy. He's not a team. He doesn't have a budget of $10 million. I know a lot of us within the church say, well, yeah, it's great for Crossroads or Eastview or New Life to be able to do that. You've got a whole team of amazing people, right, Wes? And Gary's got a Natalie. What about those of us who are in a regular sized church? What can we do? Well, here's an example from my friend Patrick Holden in Columbus, Ohio. Check this out.
God didn't just call us to plant a church. God called us to plant a church during this season, during this time, during a pandemic, even though we'd have never planned that or chosen it. And we just started to think differently, to shift our minds, to go, all of the things that we see as obstacles are really interesting opportunities for us to pivot and try new things. We're gonna start trying to reach people digitally. We need to be present in the moment, and digital allows us to do that. Truthfully, I didn't think we would make very many connections. I didn't think people would respond, but we hear this story over and over again. I would never usually answer this email, but I did, and I'm so glad that I did. And so we started FaceTiming or Zooming these people. That's how we built a launch team. We started building a launch team from several hundred miles away. But when the pandemic happened, we met as a team and we said, we weren't planning on doing this for another 6 or 9 months, but we're gonna do an online service. All these people that we have been inviting and Facebook cold calling, we invited them to be a part. And all of a sudden, it was like overnight, we launched our service and a weekly digital group in the midst of COVID. But it was like the Lord was leading us. He was going before us. We're able to reach a broader audience, but still make it extremely personal. The message of Jesus in and of itself is so irresistible. Even if you're not a follower of Jesus, you actually probably wish for the world that Jesus taught about and the new kingdom that he invited us into. When you think about right now and why now is a fantastic time to plant a church, the temptation is to go, maybe we can't meet as often as we thought, or maybe we can't meet in person. But the opportunity that's come from it is all of a sudden, because of the pandemic, because we're in an election year, because the racial tensions that we're experiencing, all of a sudden the world is asking a set of questions and they're looking for answers and they're looking to process things. This is not just about a pandemic, and the church has been primed for this moment forever. I mean, for the existence of the local church, this is what we do. Like, we show up in these moments and we get to point to the gospel, and we get to point to what Jesus has done on our behalf to lead us through these moments. And now all of a sudden, people are watching, people are thinking about it. And the temptation to step back, the temptation to think that we've lost something, the temptation to go, well, we can't gather, then what do we do? Like, this is when we get to shine. This is when we get to show up. All of the things that we tend to see as obstacles, I believe, really are opportunities, and invite Jesus to move through us during this time with individuals who are walking a road going, I'm listening in a way that maybe I haven't before, through mediums that we might not have used or leveraged as much as we could have before to reach more people. I think it's a powerful time to plant a church. I think now, in our generation, this is going to be one of the most amazing times to plant a church if we see these things a little bit differently than maybe we've seen them in the past.
Boom. Wow. So cool. So fun. Hey, thanks all for being here. Gary, you're in charge, boss. Tell us, do we have time for Q&A? Can we?
Yeah, guys, it's, we're not, I don't think they have to boot you out because we need this for someone else. So we have some time for Q&A. Those of you want to be here, want to have some larger dialogue. Maybe you've heard something from presenters, or you've even heard something that in your breakout that you're like, man, I really want to talk about this more. This would be a great opportunity. And when we get another 13 minutes or so, we can call it. And if you want to hang out and just party online because you haven't seen anybody but your spouse for a while, stick around. That's good. I haven't even seen my spouse for a while. So yeah, okay. So yeah, jump on in, and if you got any questions for either of our others, any of our hosts, Dan, Dave, anybody, or others that have been in your breakouts you want to talk about. So
I wonder if we could get a teaser from Dr. DeVries about what we can look forward to at our next webinar.
Sure. So next session, we're going to talk about the distributed church or the multi-channel church. How can we actually experience and be the church in multiple ways, online, in person, or on site, in organic, in home groups, and not necessarily value being the church in the building more than we value being the church in the community? How can we actually experience the church more the way God designed it to be, by not being so location focused? So we're not saying location doesn't matter, but what we're saying is, what if it's bigger than location as we look at how to be the church in this post-COVID era? So we're going to look at different expressions of that, as well as try to maybe push out a little beyond some of the classical thinking that we've been holding to.
Well,
Bam.
I'm looking forward to that.
So could I throw out a question that maybe kind of dovetails to that, and maybe we'll cover it in the next session, but in our breakout sessions, we started to touch a little bit on the fact that there was seems to be a disconnect that just happens relationally from doing things online versus in person. And how much of that is generational? How much of it is just really what we need to unlearn to relearn? And just that whole mindset of how not only we as pastors, but what we have to help to lead our leaders and gatherings to rethink about relationships. So I just kind of throw that out.
Yeah, that's excellent, John. Thanks.
any other thoughts on either of these topics?
I think Wes did such a great job answering all our questions. We're just all just sitting in it and
That's right.
soaking,
Yeah,
marinating.
Well, what I'm hearing from the a little bit of the quiet here is that we've got all the answers there, so we're good. Yeah, that was great.
I actually was busy. I was downloading Clubhouse.
Oh yeah, I think that was the rest of the answer. So.
Hey Gary, one of the things that came up in our breakout was just this idea of how do we engage people, not through a church platform, but people who don't yet know Christ. How do we engage them in the online medium, or how do we engage missionally online? And I think that's something hopefully Dave's going to catch up on next time as well. But I think that's a real, not that there's a silver bullet to it, but an area of curiosity.
Awesome.
Yeah,
well, guys, I think we're good. We don't need to belabor. You want to hang out? You want to chat a bit more? You feel free to make some new friends, meet some old friends. I want to say thank you so much to Chivo, to Wes, for sharing with us great stuff. I'm looking forward to digging into your presentation more, having time for that. I think also, it was good, the breakouts. I don't know about your guys, but hearing from each other what you're dealing with, making sure we're not flying too high at the 30,000 level as network leaders, but learning from you all the time. That's what we're about. So thank you for your engagement in that. So, all right. Any final thoughts, folks?
One question, Gary.
Yes, sir.
What is the chivo coming from? The nickname chivo.
Well,
because
if you find out, we will all know, because he's never divulged to our coalition the secret of his chivo-ness.
Iván, mi hermano, me imagino que usted ya lo sabe. Entonces, pues.
No. You know what happened is that in El Salvador, in other places in Central America, chivo is wow.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
It's not what it means in Mexico.
Well, that's pretty good,
thanks
though.
everyone for being here. It was really fun to do this.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. Going to hear from Dave. We're going to start getting into the how-to, and then in the following session, we're going to hear from some pastors and planters that are doing the how-to of how what COVID and post-COVID is allowing them to do in terms of multiplication, as well as engaging with people that are spread out highly relationally. So it's not all about just the big presentation on Sunday, but how are we going to truly be the church in the digital age? So thank you for being a part. Look forward to having you back for the next one. Bring your friends, okay? And Natalie will send you some follow-up stuff. So you'll have the links, you'll have the presentation we saw, the deck, some other stuff. So thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye.